And I think for me, when dealing with imposter syndrome, that's the first thing. And I call them internal trophies that you keep in your head to remind yourself of what you've done. Hello, and welcome to Enter the Nebula, episode 21. Last week we talked about rejection and how being convicted in both your values and beliefs can be a great tool to battle feelings of rejection. But what's the enemy of being convicted or conviction? For me, it's imposter syndrome. And I've seen lots of different articles and thoughts of people sharing how they deal with imposter syndrome. And I thought, what better topic to talk about this week than how I deal with imposter syndrome? Before I start talking about how I deal with it, though, I'd like to talk about what I believe the root cause of imposter syndrome is. And I think it starts with the world that we live in today, where so many people are using platforms to portray a sense of completeness, that they have all the answers and that their lives are perfect or way better than yours or mine. And it can lead to these internal thoughts of doubt in your head. And I think for me, it's qualifying and knowing that that's all that they're portraying is an image. It doesn't mean that they have all the answers. It doesn't mean that they should have all the answers. But it does mean that you have to learn to listen to those thoughts and qualify them yourself. I also think, as a root cause, we doubt ourselves because we want to do well and we don't want to do a bad job. More often than not, I like to assume positive intent with people. I know that my thoughts of self-doubt or things that I'm concerned about stem from that. It stems from wanting to do a good job and feeling like maybe I don't have all the answers. But I have to remember that the conviction I have in the skills and talent and achievements to overcome those thoughts of doubt. And I think for me, when dealing with imposter syndrome, that's the first thing. And I call them internal trophies that you keep in your head to remind yourself of what you've done. They're not external, because I think it's important to try to be humble as much as you can, especially again in this day and age where we're oversharing all of everyone's accomplishments. And it's great to shout yourself out or shout out your child if they've, accomplished something. And that's important too, because recognition is important. But the internal trophies are the trophies that you need to battle those feelings of self-doubt. And one I think of a lot when doing this newsletter is during COVID, I started blogging publicly for the first time. I've always enjoyed writing. I've always enjoyed trying to make people think or laugh or help people. And COVID shut so much down. I needed an outlet. I needed something to do. And so I just started writing. I wrote about sports. I wrote about my own thoughts and experiences. I wrote satirical pieces that I thought would make people laugh, or at least made me laugh. And I didn't think anything of it. But I wrote a blog in 2020. I think it was April or May of 2020. And it was about how I was a drug addict and that as a coach in college hockey, winning was my drug. And how did I handle losing and the thought process and feelings that went along with losing and the desire to be competitive and win and what that meant for me. And it was a few paragraphs and I didn't think anything of it again. But years later, I got an email from a father whose son played junior hockey in Vancouver, Canada, and they had just lost a major playoff game. And he had stumbled upon my blog and sent it to his son, and it helped him through that time. And I think of that often as an internal trophy, again, because I love doing these newsletters. I love writing these blogs. And I think to myself, if I can just maybe give one person some help, or if one person finds this, intriguing, or makes them think of something that can make them be successful or help them be successful, great. So having internal trophies that you can reference in your head when you start to think, man, who even reads this? Why am I even doing this? Does it really add any value? Go back to those trophies and remind yourself of what you've accomplished, because the fact of the matter is they're there and you have done things. So that can help with those feelings of self-doubt and imposter syndrome. The second is something that I coach both professionally and athletically to my players or employees, and that is being self-aware. And I think there's two types of self-awareness. The first one is your self-awareness of the capabilities that you currently have. And capabilities are different than potential. We'll talk about potential in a second. But using a sports analogy, if you are a runner and you run the mile in 7.5 minutes or 6.5 minutes, you know you're capable of running the mile in 6.5 minutes. And it's a fact. You don't run the mile in 6 minutes, you run it in 6.5. Now, you may have the potential, if you continue to work hard, to run it in 6 minutes. But you probably don't have the potential, unless you're a superhero, to run it in 2.5 minutes, right? And I think that's important for us to remember internally, again, as we reflect on our self-awareness. What am I capable of doing now? I can run a mile in 6.5 minutes. What am I potentially capable of doing in the future? And being able to understand the work and effort it's going to take to do those things, to get there in the future, and be able to explain to either a future employer or your supervisor what you're going to do to be able to get there. Because oftentimes we're given stretch assignments, and that's because our supervisor or coach believes that we can and have the potential to do those things. And I think sometimes with imposter syndrome, we get stuck on the now. We get stuck on, I can only run a mile in 6.5 minutes. I'll never be able to run a mile in 6 minutes because I just do it in 6.5 minutes, and that's what I'm capable of doing. Don't sell yourself short, because if you work hard enough, you may be able to run it in 6 minutes. In fact, you probably will. So understanding the difference between the two and understanding the work required to get to your potential is important, because you want to make sure in any kind of stretch assignment that you have the support and structure to reach your potential, right? Um, I think those three things are probably the most pivotal to me when dealing with imposter syndrome, and embracing those fears, because the other thing that they do is they keep you honest. Those voices in your head that are you sure you're able to do that? If you look at them more as a gut check and can keep them in check to say, yeah, I can for sure do that. Or give you a pause for concern. Can I? Because another analogy that I like to give is, in hockey, it's hard to separate sometimes the great versus good players, because oftentimes the things they can do are fairly similar. Unlike track, where it's very cut and dry, hockey, you may be able to shoot the puck in the top corner of the net when nobody's looking or nobody's around you. But can you do it while moving full speed while a defender's on you? Sure. Can you do it 9 out of 10 times? I don't know. And that's where it's, what are your true capabilities and true potential? Having those internal conversations to be self-aware of what you can do and what you need to continue to practice before you can do it. And having a safe space to be able to practice them is important. Rambled a little bit, but to tie it up in a bow here, when you're having feelings of self-doubt, or you're feeling like you're not good enough, or you're getting those imposter syndrome thoughts, remember what you've done. Go to your internal trophy case and remember what you've accomplished. And then think about what you're currently capable of doing and truly what your potential is. And then be confident and convicted in the way you move forward. Thank you for listening to this week's episode. My name's Mike Ergo. I would love to hear any feedback. Please comment on the video or article, any new topics that you'd like to see or how you think things are going. You could read the full article on my website, intellectualnebula.com. Please be sure that you're following, liking, subscribing to all my social media channels, as it helps continue to build my brand. I hope you have a great rest of your week, and I'll see you next time.